So I'm an older fella that's been playing guitar for decades, and I decided to address my weaknesses on the instrument later in life. Several years ago, I was like, I'm gonna just try to do the things that I've always wanted to do. And one of those things is being able to play across the fretboard better. Okay, for now, let's call it better. And I've definitely been able to do that. I see the fretboard way differently than I used to. I approach it entirely differently. And so I make these videos to help cement these ideas and these concepts into my brain, into my thinking, and at the same time share the things that I've noticed, the struggles I've had, in hopes that there's an audience out there of people, I know there is, there's an audience out there of people who probably would like to save time and not run into every single time-wasting problem that someone like myself has experienced. And so maybe there's people younger than me that want to cut to the chase on some of this stuff, and maybe there's people that are the same age as me that are tired of the approach that they've had for a long time and want to change it up. One of the things I see people asking about is how to play something like the pentatonic scale all over the fretboard. And it makes me think of that image of the fretboard, the lines with the strings and the lines of the frets, and then the dots showing you what the patterns are. And that's got to be pretty overwhelming to look at and think, oh, I got to memorize that. And I got to I think that's a good reference point, and it's a good tool, but it's not the only way to learn. I think you can use that to a certain point, but you also want to know what the intervals are. This is what's helped me, is understand what the intervals are. And I'll give you a quick example. If you're playing a song in A minor, okay, it's good knowing where all the A minors are, okay? Okay, so if you don't know this, a chord is made up of a triad, a root, a third, and a fifth. In the case of a minor, it's a root, a flat third, and a fifth, okay? In the case of a diminished, it's a root, a flat third, and a flat fifth. So this is helpful because that's really what the main difference is between a major scale and a minor scale, is that you're taking your third and you're flatting it. So in the case of A, you have an A is your root, is your one, C sharp is your third, and E is your fifth. That's a major. And then a minor is the same, but with you flat the sharp C to the C sharp to a C. Okay, and then it's applicable in the scale as well. The other thing to consider is that you, instead of playing a major seven, what they call a major seven, there's one note flat of the root, it's a whole step flat of the root. That's called a flat seven, okay? So that's a root, a flat third, and a flat seven. It's very bluesy sounding. Now, if you understand those intervals, then, and you know where the notes are, you can play it anywhere. Nothing's going to stop you. You don't need to see the pictures of the lines and the dots and the patterns. You can play. You can just play it. You're playing in A minor. I'm going to try to do this video all in one take, so excuse some of my examples. I may make mistakes and stuff like that, but whatever. Here's an A minor. So that lick, or the series of notes, is fifth, a root, a minor third, bent up slightly, reaching for the major third, which is a very bluesy, it's a very vocal thing to do, back to the root, and the flat seven. It's a combination of those notes. There you go, playing the A minor, and then I'm lifting the root to expose the flat seven, make it A minor 7. Just adds a little texture. flat third, fourth, fifth, flat 7, root, flat third. Now if I want to play that in another position, I can do it. Okay? I don't need to reference the pictures. I know what the intervals are between the notes. Okay? The fifth, the root, the flat 7, the fourth. The flat third, bent up slightly. Okay? That's the magic of that. Now, if you're in a situation where you're making a creative decision to switch from an A minor pentatonic to an E minor pentatonic, you can do it. You can do it in the same position. So the first part of that progression is A minor, E minor, A minor. You're just getting used to that. Then change to an E minor, okay? So the chord progression changes. Now it's off that riff, and when you hit this part in the progression, you may decide you want to switch from playing an A minor pentatonic to an E minor. Okay, those are two different sounds here. Or all I'm doing is just like here. You're taking it. You know that this is an A minor and you know this is an E minor. Understanding why your fingers are where they are is super helpful. Taking the time to learn why a chord, why is this a G, why is this a C, why is this a D? Okay, taking that time to understand that can really help your playing. This is a G, for instance, because you have a root, you have a third, and you have a fifth. And then you're repeating that root, third, root. So you can repeat any combination of the same notes. Especially like beginner, intermediate, you tend to rely on the bass note being the root note. But there's lots of situations where that's not the case. For instance, when you're playing alternating bass lines with a chord. You're alternating between the root and the fifth. In this case, you're playing a C chord and you're alternating between the C and the G. The C is the root, and the G is the fifth of C. G, playing the G and the G is the root, and then you're alternating to the D. So if you're playing it here, okay. So understanding why the chords are what they are. So here's this A minor, and here's an E minor. Here's an A minor scale. And here's an E minor scale. My hand is in the same position. I'm altering the notes that I'm playing because the scale calls for a different set of notes, but the same intervals in relation to the tonic. So if the tonic is changed to an E minor, we know this is the root, this is the minor third, this is the fifth. That's the minor, that's the lowered seventh, back to the root. And here's the minor third, the fourth, the fifth, the flat 7, back to the root. It's actually pretty simple. And it gives your playing color if you're able to identify these differences in the chords and then play lead lines or embellishments that go to that, rather than playing just A minor pentatonic all the time over an E minor chord, which that's a creative decision, but it might not always be the best one or the most interesting one. It's definitely going to be interesting at some times. Everything depends on context and relationships, relativity to what your ear is hearing. And there might be times where playing A minor pentatonic over an E minor chord is a very interesting thing to do. But there's plenty of times where if you're playing a progression that just happens to have an E minor in it and it's primarily A minor, then there might be an opportunity to pull some of those notes from the E minor that aren't in the A minor pentatonic and utilize them. Okay? And that's, I think, what really sets players apart, where you start to sound a little more sophisticated. When I talk about trying to sound more sophisticated as a guitarist, as a lead player, or even as a rhythm player, I also think you cannot underestimate the power of knowing a lot of turnarounds. I think that's something I'm working on currently, but the more turnarounds you kind of have under your fingertips, the more cool stuff you can actually do. The whole thing can be a turnaround. You can start a song on a turnaround. These are all intervals. And making you think about these things is what makes you improve, is really taking the time to... Those are all just intervals. All intervals. So again, here's an A minor pentatonic. Here's an E minor pentatonic. It's the same, but you have to always remember that there's a compensation that goes on when you're traveling from the second to the third string, or the third to the second string. The second string is half a step up. I guess the second string and the first string are half a step up in relationship to the other strings. So you got to always consider that and getting that under your fingertips, knowing that here's an A minor pentatonic. There's an E minor pentatonic. Anyway, I'm trying to demonstrate just audibly how different it can be, but let me know what you think about this, and by all means, tell me where I'm wrong too. Love to hear it. I make these videos and I really don't get a lot of criticism. I could use some.